The following video ideas and commentary comes from the article Remain Calm and Respond Right When a Student Challenges by Dahlgren. This article talks about misbehavior in the classroom and ways that you can prevent the misbehavior from occurring or stop it when it does occur without causing disruption or losing your rapport with your students. As an educator, there are many different ways that misbehavior can happen, and there needs to be a plan set up to stop the misbehavior from happening if you possibly can. So for my classroom, the first day that my students come in, I plan on making a PowerPoint explaining myself, where I'm from, my expectations, and having a few class rules set up, and then giving each student a sticky note and having them come up with a rule that they think would be beneficial to the classroom. I also, depending on the grade level, would have a clipboard which has tally marks. If it was a higher grade, like a C in conduct or circling like they did at 5th grade at O'Rourke, or if they were lower grade, have a clip up, clip down system, which I did not overuse, or possibly Class Dojo, where the points would be taken or added due to behavior. The main point that this article talked about is it's not about the misbehavior that occurs, but the way that you respond to the behavior that is occurring. So the article talked about that you need to not react directly and not give the students upper hand. So, for instance, if there was an occurrence in my classroom where it was very disruptive, I would take 3 to 5 breaths and then respond to the action that's occurring. I think this is beneficial for me personally, because I react quickly and don't really think some things through. And if I do that in the classroom, I'll blow up and I'll lose the respect that my students have for me. And by waiting to respond, I'm showing my students that I'm not letting it affect me, and also by responding after, it's showing that it's not just something that they can brush off. For a whole class disruption, where if it was the whole class being disrespectful, I would stop the lesson and address the class as a whole. And if it was just a student or a couple of students, after the lesson was over, when I'd given the enrichment or the activity for them to do, I would ask them to come talk to me at my desk, and we would talk it through, and I would make sure to hear their side and talk about my side. And if behavior really became a big problem in my classroom, and there was a lack of respect between me and my students, or students just were off task or blew up easily, I would follow the lead of a 4th grade teacher that I shadowed for a day, who had a bunch of disruptions in the classroom and a bunch of conflict. She gave each student a sticky note and had them write on the sticky note how they would calm themselves or control themselves or keep themselves away from a student that disrespected them. And she planned on keeping this throughout the school year. So not only would I have my students do that, but I would do it as well with them to show that everyone has struggles and conflicts, and I would try my best to keep up with those and remind my students of what they had talked about. So there are many disruptions that happen in the classroom, and the way that you react is clearly what's going to make or break it. So this article talked about 4 different ways that students challenge their teachers. So it's the 4 different ways are past history, defending the credibility, button pushing, and threats. This video has taught me that there's a few ways that you can quickly respond. They're called diffusers, and your diffusers are just a quick, off the cuff, you don't really think about it, you just kind of say it, and to make them realize that you're in control and that they're not disrupting a lesson. So there were a lot that were listed in the video, but a few that I think I would use would be, I see your concern. So if they were questioning what was happening, I would say that. Everything that I teach is for a reason. You might not just see it yet. And understandable. So I definitely have learned through this class that the way that you handle yourself and the way that you handle your classroom makes or breaks your school year. And as an educator, I need to have perfect ways to transition in and out of my classroom. For example, maybe having an alternating schedule, and that class jobs and leadership also help the classroom. And if each student has something that they're responsible for, they feel like they matter in the classroom. And I need to make sure that each one of my students has their voice heard, and that when I call in students, I'm not calling on the same student, and that I'm taking the time to get to know my students and differentiating my classroom towards my students. And if things that I'm implementing aren't working, that I'm flexible and relate them to my students and not what I've done in the past.